Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Lee, here with my co-host, Matty B. And it's almost like a holiday. EA College Football 25 has been released. And honestly, I gave some false information. I think it's last week. I told you I didn't get the deluxe edition on the show, I believe. And so I didn't think I'd be able to play early. But because I have Game Pass Ultimate, apparently that includes EA Play, which is like their other subscription that you can pay for, and it gives you 10 hours of early gameplay, which I didn't know. So I was like, all right, I had already pre-ordered the game, like I said, which my reward coupons did work. And I want to say that Microsoft randomly had given me another $5 gift card, so the game was even cheaper than what I speculated last week. Because I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot all about this. I thought it expired in June. And it was supposed to, but it didn't. So, big win from Xbox for me, randomly. It was supposed to be for their summer sale. I never got anything. Because I only play Game Pass. But if you're looking to do the same thing, which is why I brought it up anyway, before I started getting off on a tangent. You have to go into the subscription tab of like Game Pass. There's like a couple different things. So if you go to Game Pass app, there'll be a tab that says EA Play. If you click on that, it'll say extra benefits. You click on extra benefits and it will say, here are 4 games you can play early. You have to download an additional EA College Football trial from there. I had already preloaded the game. So I bought it, whatever, I don't even know when I bought it, a while ago. And I went in and it was like, you have this pre-order, do you want to download it? I said, yeah. And I tried to play it through there. It did not work. It said, you do not have access. So I thought, here I am. I can't play it. So later that night, I was like, now I have some time to mess around with this. I wonder if I can figure out when. Because on my email, I went back through and it said that I could play it on the 16th. Which would have been today. And so I was trying to plan it out, like, could I get some gameplay in before we record the podcast? And I was able to find that EA Play tab, download a trial, and then it worked. So that was awesome. So a big shout out to them, because it's kind of weird. You can pay for their subscription, you get a 10-hour trial, and then they don't add the game to it until later. Like, I don't know what college football cycle is going to be, but every year they add Madden right when the NFL playoffs start or somewhere around there, so maybe before the Super Bowl. Because if you don't buy the new Madden, it will get added to Game Pass, at least Game Pass Ultimate or whatever I have, every year around the playoffs time, which is when I want to play it anyway, so it's almost perfect timing for me. But before I get into my thoughts, Matt, you got to play early too. What are your thoughts on the game?
I was surprised. There's always the anticipation of is it gonna match up with how the previous edition was? Is it gonna be better? Are they going to just rubber stamp it like they have with Madden? And honestly, I was absolutely blown away by the options and availability of everything. I mean, we were kind of talking before we started rolling that the amount of detail that went into the playbook options, and I think this is kind of a cool thing that I heard they were doing for the colleges, is that they were like specifically generating special playbooks for the colleges so that like the actual teams could use like their own actual playbook on NCAA, which I thought would be a pretty cool thing that as guys are playing naturally would be a good way for them to learn some of the schemes and stuff. But from a base level, like with the air raid playbook that they have, I mean it's literally the verbiage that Mummy and Leach developed over the years. So I mean, you're really getting a true look at some of the play calls.
Yeah, I will say there was a lot of misinformation, I'll say. out there from like the influencers that they gave the game to, and that was kind of bumming me out because they were saying things like you can't play head to head online with friends, you can't like change playbooks around and stuff like that, you can't do like any editing, and I think it's pretty clear now that they were playing a pre-release version of the game because I haven't messed with a lot of the other customizations, so I can't speak on that, but I do know the first thing I looked for was head-to-head online, which they do have. You can invite a friend to it. I logged right in. Friends list came up. I'm assuming from other people I played Madden with or hockey or something. Because it wasn't my entire Xbox friend list. It was just a couple of people. So that it is there. And I haven't got too much into other customizations, but a lot of the other presentation stuff, I was surprised that there seemed to be a lot of the same modes. Because I've been playing NCAA 14 pretty much nonstop, right? Even the emulated version. I had the PS3. I tried to patch the game or whatever. And then eventually I moved. I just ripped my copy to the computer because the PS3 version was like, it didn't do the customizations as well as on PC, but then the PCs couldn't really keep up until recently. Like the emulator still isn't there. There's still a lot of like weird things where the field will be like black for like the first couple plays. You have to quit the game and then reload it for the grass to load. So it is annoying, but it did feel very familiar. The one thing that we had talked about before we went is just like a little bit on the difficulty and the controls. The controls are pretty much the same from what I remember, or like what I've been using, right? I don't know if I ever made any customizations. I do know that the revamped team is the one I've been playing for like the last 3 or 4 years. And they do have a separate controls that you can do on PC. So I'm using whatever they recommend. It seems pretty close to what the EA college football game came out with. The only thing that gets me is the passing, because I'm using their new passing system because I thought, oh, I'll use it as intended, right? See what the game wanted to be before we talk about it. And in the old game, you press a button, he throws it, and it's like an average, like supposed to be an accurate pass. And if you hold it in, then you would bullet the pass, and you could kind of aim it. I think I know Madden, you could aim it, maybe not on the old college football because that's how old. But in this one, you have to kind of hold it to fill a bar to kind of see how your accuracy. So there were a couple times where I dialed up a good play, my guy's wide open, and I'm like just tapping the button because I'm like, I need just an accurate pass here. And it's like the most highest lobbed ice cream truck pass of all time, to where my guy just stops running and I watch the defender catch up from like down 20 yards and I'm like, oh no, he's going to intercept it. But honestly, every time that happened, where my guy was so wide open, just tapping the button because I forget, he's caught it every time. He just gets tackled immediately because the guy catches up to him. By that time, one of them, it was like right in the middle of the field. I was trying to hit my running back on like one of the crossing things out of the backfield where he delays, and I'm like, this is always wide open in these games. And it was, and I'm like, why did I tap it? There's 3 linebackers right there. They're going to intercept this thing. And then they killed my guy. But I will say, I didn't mind the new passing things. I don't understand punting. Did you punt?
Well, it's funny that you say that because with the punting and kicking aspects, I didn't recognize the change in it because I was so confused because Master Manos is supposed to be one of the best punters in college this year. And I was just shanking punts. I'm like, what is going on? And then I realized like there's the meter that kind of sways left to right.
Yeah.
And has like to try to center it. But then after you hit your A button on the Xbox, you have to hold it in and then it increases for your power level.
Are you serious? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I thought you had to press it with a stick the way the image was. So I was flicking the stick and I'm like, maybe I'm doing it too early? Because the punts are just like, I'm skying them, bro. Like 10-second hang time for 20 yards, and I'm like, why am I doing? What is going on here?
Well, with the stick, and this was some playing around. you can aim with your
You can make it higher
pad.
or whatever. I'm assuming I was trying to do a coffin corner, and I made it high, but I had no power, so he just skied it for a 20-yard punt. And I'm like, kind of worked, because then the defense is like they're afraid to catch it, so then it bounces really high too.
Because there were some field goals that I was trying to kick early that I was like, this is well within field goal range of like even a terrible kicker. Like this is within range, and I'm just shanking. I'm like, maybe they did just like, because I started it on Heisman just thinking maybe that's just the level of difficulty that there's like literally no margin of error. I was like, all right, maybe that's the way it is, and then I was feeling some type of way, and decided I'm just going to put it on the easiest setting and have my rubber match with Georgia to see just what the difference is going from Heisman to like freshman or whatever. And then all these little like tips camp, like, hey, hold in for your kick. I was like, there it is.
So if I played on easy, I could get the tips.
Yeah.
I was hoping they had and maybe they do have this, and I haven't found. I didn't look through all the menus, but Madden used to have that skills camp thing where you could like really drill in, and I was hoping that they had that in this game. But I'm assuming it might be tied to Ultimate Player or something, where
it is.
Make your guy the kicker if you can. They said you couldn't make him some positions like safety for some reason.
Well,
but that could have been an early thing. I don't know.
But the Ultimate Team, where we'll get you all triggered, because in with like the player packs and stuff, like there's different challenges that you can do, and they have specific like special teams ones, offensive ones, defensive ones that it kind of breaks down some of the different aspects of it. One of the other things that kind of threw me for a loop was the way that they do the option style. Because
I didn't understand it.
If you don't hit any buttons, it just hands it off.
It said that though, but what if you're running an RPO? Because I was like, the first time I didn't hit any buttons, and it stayed with my quarterback, and I was like, what am I supposed to do here? I thought he was going to pass it, or I thought he was going to hand it off, is what I thought was going to happen, because I thought it said that if you don't press any buttons, he'll hand it off. It wasn't the case, and then I was trying to hammer A, and he didn't throw it, and then he got sacked. And I was like, all right, well, that didn't work. So then the next time I ran, I didn't press any buttons because I thought, all right, I need a quarterback run here, and I'm going to be ready this time. And then he handed it off, and I was like, all right, obviously I'm doing something wrong, or I knew that was a different play because there wasn't a passing option. And then it did pop up and said, yeah, brother, press A if you want to keep it. And I thought, well, I didn't press A the first time and I kept it. So then I was like, I don't know. I need a practice mode where I just run the same play like 30 times. Because like I remember the Sammy Watkins days where I said I'd make Sammy my quarterback, send the guy in motion, and I would run my own like jet sweep type option because he also could pitch it. So whatever the play was back in the day, you could just run it and switch it and do what I do, hurry up on you guys. You played me against that.
Yeah, it was Wildcat, and then
so I had three options.
Stupid fight song play.
Yeah, I have three options on every play. Either Sammy could keep it and quarterback sneak up the middle, and he was fast as hell, or it was like I forget even who the other receiver was. They had another fast receiver. He was coming across. I could hand it off to him on like a jet sweep action, or I could pitch it to the direction that the guy crossed from. So I could just do a pitch to him and he would kind of just do a run. So if someone tried to jam up, so I was basically reading like if I'm playing Matt, he's going to be the outside backer. He's going to come in and he's going to be like, all right, I got to stop Sammy Watkins up the middle. I could just pitch it to him every time. And if he tried to shift the defense over to take that pitch away, then I would just hand off in the jet sweep. And it was almost unstoppable. Like I remember playing a bunch of people they told me they were great at the game, and I would run the score up to where like I think one of our cousins was like ready to punch his screen because he was like, I'm gonna crush you. And he's talking so much trash, and I just ran that up, and I'm like, should I score 70? Should I score 100 on you? And the funny thing is like that running style eats the clock. So if they give up 2 touchdowns, like they can't come back because they're just out of time. So then they start running and throwing like pick sixes and stuff. So then it really gets out of hand on them. So it's like infuriating. So I'm like, I wonder if I could recreate that and play some fools online. But I don't know. I didn't play online or anything yet. I know the servers were too overloaded anyway. When I fired up the game, it was like, hey, heavy load or something. I got some weird message. Did you get that?
No.
It was like, I tried to check out some of the online stuff, and it was like, hey, we know there's something, we're working on it. And I thought, that's pretty much par for the course. I knew this was going to be a bad like thing where everyone's playing it right now and tweeting.
Although it was hilarious because we were at the pool because it was hotter than the surface of the sun yesterday. And I was clock watching a little bit. I was like, it's getting close to that time that, like, do I stay and swim or do I head home and brace myself for the drop? And my son goes, Dad, pack it up. We're out of here. And I looked at my watch and it was like 1:45 or so. And I was like, all right, say no more. I guess we'll go home.
So that's where my kids had practice, swim practice. And that's whenever I finally sat down and was like, all right, I'm going to see if I have access. Because I did yard work instead. I needed to cut the grass. I cut the grass while it downloaded or whatever, like while it updated. And so, because I had tried it at like 5 when I got finished up with work, I'm like, I'm going to try it. And that's when it said I didn't have access. So I updated it to the latest version and I cut the grass. I came back in and it still said I didn't have access. So then I thought, all right, I wonder if that's when I played around with EA Play. And so I started to get in. I played Notre Dame. And the first game, it went pretty well. I was afraid to kick field goals. Like you had said, after my punts, I thought, well, there's no way in hell I can kick field goals. Right? So I'm like, I got to go for touchdown. So then I got a pretty good lead on Notre Dame. And my son comes home and he's like, what are you doing, Dad? What is this? And I'm like, it's a college football game. He's like, well, I need to play this. I said, you don't even like football. And he's like, no, I want to play. Who are we, Michigan? I'm like, yeah, all right. So he's like, well, can I join in? And I was like, no, you can't. I got to finish the game, and then I'll add you in on the next one. Because I just wanted to play the first game, and finish it out. And they tied it up. I run a kick back, and then they throw a pick six. And I thought, all right, it's over now. There's like a minute or something left. Which I was surprised that I even ran a kickback. Because I don't know the last time I ran one back in NCAA 14, probably never. That it was like, first off, I didn't even think Michigan had any fast kick returners like that. But it was a Morris guy that outran the Bama guy, so he's pretty quick in the game. And I thought, well, that's par for the course. And it was almost like a broken kick return because I was trying to see like what the jukes were doing. And he like did like a stiff arm instead, and I'm like, all right, well, that's not right. And when he did it, like the defensive guy just froze, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I could run this back. And he outran the kicker, and I was like, that's awesome. So then I'm like, let's just hurry up and end the game. I'm like, I told my son, like, once I stop him here, I'll just kneel, and then you can jump in the next game. They throw the first pass. They're out of timeouts, mind you, because they were trying to, so basically what happened before I did the kick return, I scored, but I was trying to eat as much clock as possible to give me the lead. They burnt all their timeouts when I took the lead, and then they broke like a Hail Mary and scored to tie it right back up in one play. But they were already out of timeouts. So, or whatever, I can't remember the exact scenario, but it was something like that, where they tied it up after they ran out of timeouts and I was trying to end the game anyway. So they're out of timeouts. That's important for this. Because on the first play, they throw a wide receiver hook for a 5-yard gain in the left flat. My guy, I'm testing out a hit stick, right? I injure the guy with a hit stick. because I was playing like thirds or something, and the cornerback dropped back, and then of course they catch an easy 5-yarder. The clock stops. It gives them a penalty or an injury timeout, which in real life that doesn't happen because the offense could fake an injury and then give themselves a timeout, right? The clock never rolls. I don't look at the down because in my head, I'm setting my defense up and I'm like, all right, 2nd and 5, I'm going to blitz them here. I get a big sack. So it should be 3rd and like 12 or 15 or something like that. Like they go all the way back. They throw another hook to the right side. So it's about like 4th and 7, 4th and 9 or something like that. And they run a slant. And my safety comes down and tackles them like a yard short. And I told my son, like, all right, I'm going to kneel it now. And no, they give him another 4th and 1. And I'm like, whoa, what the hell? Because the only reason that I even remembered the downs is because I was just trying to get a quick stop on 4th down so that I could kneel it out. And so then, of course, they convert the 4th down. And he's like, Dad, you said you're going to kneel it. And I'm like, would you just be quiet? I don't know what happened here. And the best I can figure is whenever I injured the guy, the game glitched, gave him like an extra timeout, but it must have reset it to 1st and 5. Because the down marker was right. I remember I was like, I really need a sack. So I called an all-out like blitz. And I got the sack because I didn't want them to get like a 3rd and short. So then they had a 3rd and long. And then, like I said, they got closer. So it was like 4th and 7 or 4th and 9 or something like that. And I thought, what a load of crap. And so I let them know. I did tweet at EA Sports. They didn't respond yet. But then when we did play together, both of our guys are the same color. So we have no idea who we are. And he's like, Dad, which guy am I? I'm like, I don't know. Quit changing your guy. Because we can't tell who's who. They're both green and they both have blue dots on the top of them. And there were different amounts of blue dots. And then the one guy turned red, but I think that was because he was tired when I took my screenshot, because I don't remember the red being there unless it's so hard to see from the couch that there's a red marker on player 2 or player 1. I don't know. So, did you play co-op local?
No.
Because if you do, you'll have to let me know if your thing, because that's what I thought. I'm like, all right. He's like, Dad, we need to be Michigan and we need to play against America. See if they can beat America. I'm like, I wish that was possible. We're going to have to play someone else. He's like, well, play against North Carolina. That's where we live. And I said, that's a good move. So he played on the road because I wanted to see if it was like harder. And North Carolina's not. It did look like they had a couple of shots where their bleachers upper deck was empty, which made me laugh. And I don't know if that was a glitch or if that was realistic, but I do know that if Michigan played in North Carolina, Michigan would have a lot more fans. So I was kind of disappointed with that. When I played at home against Notre Dame, and this is only from like personal experience, the student section I expected to be wearing all maize shirts because that was our thing when I was there. And I'm pretty sure that it's still a thing because if you look on TV, you'll see maize. And I wouldn't even have been sad if they had the upper part of the student section empty because I thought that'd be funny. Because there are some games where like the students like leave early or they show up late. So you see the initial view of the stadium. It looks like how they have it, but there's a clear yellow section, maize section, and then parts of that is empty because the students are outside. They don't all come in right away, right? Even if they're giving you free Domino's pizza. Sometimes you get in that line, you're like, that's back when we used to have the ex-Domino's CEO. He's always giving us Domino's and stuff, which is funny. But they didn't have that in the game. I almost told him, like, and I still might. It depends if I can find a bunch of good screenshots of it. Like, look, I'm surprised you guys don't have this because you had to look at the TV broadcast. Student section 6 sits by the band every time, and I didn't really see the band there either. And they kept saying about how realistic the stadiums were. And my son did say, why do the cheerleaders keep doing the same thing? And I said, I noticed that too. So both Michigan's and Notre Dame's cheerleaders did the exact same cheers every time. And I couldn't skip it. I couldn't skip halftime, which was annoying. Did you notice that?
Yeah. Well, you just have to hold in The
Oh, I tried holding in everything. I couldn't get it to skip. I missed a coin toss both times. Apparently, you don't pick heads or tails anymore, right?
I didn't. I saw in the preferences it just said prefer like to if you win the toss, do you prefer to receive or kick? And if you prefer like which if you lose it, which preference do you have for defending?
And I saw people defending that choice, and they were like, if you're the coach, you don't know what the player's going to choose. But I'm like, yeah, you do tell him what to do. And that's why I wonder, like, if some people, like, getting their thoughts never played football. Like, I've been the coin toss guy. Coach tells you exactly what to do. And if you say the wrong thing, he'll probably punch you on the sideline. Especially if it's Woody Hayes over there. You never know if he's going to punch a player or not. You're just like, all right, I better do what he says, right? I mean, you've been coaching, right? You tell the players, like, no, we're defending that goal. The wind, right? In the fourth quarter. Like, everyone knows exactly what's going to happen. That's why coach picks, like, the smarter guy to be on a team captain. He's like, please get the kick right. Because in high school, I think it's high school, you can defer to the second half. And in the second half, if you defer again, the team will get the ball both halves. I've seen it happen.
Yep.
And so it's like, what are you doing? So normally they ask the coach, like, is that right? Because even the refs know, like, that guy's not supposed to be kicking twice. But you never know. So I am disappointed with that. Like, why change that? And I know they're just trying to be different. But, like, some of the intro was the exact same one they put on Twitter, or YouTube or whatever a week ago, which makes sense. Like, that's their profile one. It's the one that ends with, like, Michigan holding up the trophy with Donovan Edwards. I forget what the entire sequence is. So if you don't press anything when the game loads, you'll see that same exact YouTube video that they made a promo of. That's the intro to the game. And I didn't listen to the announcers either. So I don't know, but I'm guessing it's only ESPN broadcast. I was wondering if that was why they had some agreement with, like, the game day guys, if that's why they were like, we're going to make it really hard, if not impossible, to skip the broadcast on halftime. Because normally there's a button, it will be like, hold it in. And I'm looking and I didn't see anything to skip that. And I'm like, I don't need to see the game. Like, I just played it. It's like I took a 2-hour break and came back. And I was like, wonder what happened in the first half. I need a movie I can't skip real quick. I'm trying to think what else, if there are any other bugs that I noticed. There were some weird things where the defenders on my team, because how I like to play linebacker, and what I'll do is I'll pursue. So, like, let's say they run a toss. I don't run and try to cut him off so he cuts it back. I like to go down the line of scrimmage so that he can't cut it back, force him to the sideline, and normally, like, my cornerback will be there to make a tackle. There were, like, 3 times where I'm like, I'm not going to switch, and I'm going to let the computer guy at least slow him down, and then my guy typically makes a tackle or does, like, a half and half. Where the cornerback just, like, dives for no reason, and then their guy's, like, running up the sideline clean because he doesn't slow him up so that I never catch him with the angle I took, right? And I'm like, what the heck? So I've been catching myself switching a lot more than what I've done in the past with NCAA 14. Because on defense, I don't trust the computer to make the tackle. Or even I'm not even saying make the tackle. I'm saying make contact. The computer, for some reason, when I played, they were diving every chance they could get. And I saw my guys get hurdled like 3 times. So much I'm surprised I didn't dream about it. Like, I'm catching them. The other guy, like, or he breaks a tackle of mine, and then the next guy coming up, I'm like, oh, he should stop him. Nope, he's diving, and he's hurdling him. And I'm like, good grief, that turned a 3-yard gain into a 27-yard gain because my guy dove for no reason. So I'm like, oh, I break up my tackle, hurt and switch. So that's one thing that I noticed that was annoying. And the injury thing. Whoa. They did give a heads up that the injury is going to be way more than what a normal game has. And I mean, maybe in college they have the injury data and they rolled the dice so that players do get injured every game. I don't know. But it seems like I'm going back to playing NFL Quarterback Club 98, where if you're familiar with that game, the guy could break out for like a long run, and if you kept using turbo, he would injure himself. and then an ambulance would come out and pick him up. And that's what I felt like, where it's like, all right, the game's on the line. Do I give it to Donovan Edwards? No, because he will get hurt every time he touches the ball. And then he'll miraculously heal himself and be right back in, and it will give me a prompt that says, like, do you want him to play? He could get injured again. And I'm like, no, but I don't know how to do the subs. It's like, call timeout. They're like, call timeout. It will let him heal up, and it didn't do anything. And then he's hurt again. And I'm like, so my best guy is injured at the end of the game if it's close. Because North Carolina was up, and the defense, we didn't know who we were. So they scored 2 or 3 times because I switched to the cornerback thinking I was the wrong guy. And then their guys they're gashing us. And then we were yelling at each other, who am I, Dad? That's what he's yelling at me. Which guy am I? I'm like, I don't know. Quit switching. I'm going to tape that button. I'm going to tape it up or take it out of your controller so you can't press it. And then we'll know who's who. But I will say the game did get my son into football, so I'm very grateful for that. He wanted to play today after the swim meet. He's like, Dad, are we going to be able to play college football? I'm like, I'm actually going to do a podcast spot, buddy. I said, we'll be back. Don't worry. He wants to start a dynasty with Michigan to see if we can win together. And he's Donovan Edwards, so he gets mad when he gets injured. Because he's like, Dad, I want to be number 7. He has a star. I don't want to be number 20. I'm like, 20 is pretty good, though. Should mix it up. But that's my thoughts on the game. I liked it. They oversold a little bit on the presentation because, like I said, the cheerleading and stuff, all the cheers with the sound off were like the same. Push-ups every time, showing the crowd. For all the hype that they put into, like, all the details that we put in, from like Clemson touching that rock and then running down a hill. I didn't see Dabo running down the hill because in real life he does do that. For who knows why he does it. Attention. He's like, I need to be running down the hill like a crazy man. Like he's John Rocker. Remember when John Rocker used to get hit? He'd throw the ball at him warming up, and he wouldn't catch it. They'd let it hit him in the chest, and then he'd pick it up off the ground and throw it. That's how he'd warm up. And then when they called him, he'd just go sprinting to the mound. That's what Dabo reminds me of. Just like a crazy Southern man that's doing crazy things. But yeah, they put all that in. And then, who knows? Like, there are just little things that I would have fixed. Like, you would think that they would have been like, hey, what do we need here? Because I think there were a couple other, like, smaller schools, like Texas State or whatever, like, they didn't even have the upper deck on their stadium that I saw people tweeting about. And I'm like, that's kind of hard to miss, right? You could just look at a picture and see what the stadium looks like. But we'll see if they make any improvements. I definitely want to see, because I did report them to them on Twitter. So maybe next week we'll get an update or not. We'll see. Anything else you want to talk about with college football?
There was, like, within the playbooks, and that was kind of where I was looking just to see how much different the different styles were going to be, because there are the Paul Johnson flexbone guys that I think would have lost it had that component not been added. You had the various styles with the run and shoot and the air raid, and I was curious to see how drastically different it was. And like when you look at like a Tennessee playbook, like it's true to their style with the really wide splits and like trying to cover the entire width of the field. And I thought that was a pretty interesting component. And with some of the teams that have run and shoot components where depending on the leverage of the defender, their route adjusts, I think that they did a really good job with having some of the outside and inside choice routes, because those are, like, personally some of my favorite concepts to run. It's hard to teach, but if you can get the kids to understand it, I mean, it basically turns high school or college football into backyard football that I think kids naturally find fun.
What about flag football? You think that's fun?
Flag football is like Vietnam, buddy. Not many. It takes a rare breed of person to survive that.
The only reason I brought up is because I've been getting a lot of ads from like the NFL's doing their flag football showcase. Is going to be on ABC, and I thought I don't think I'll ever watch it. I don't care. Like Michigan would have to, because I do watch a lot of, like Michigan sports just because of connection I have with the school. If they had a team make the national championship, I might watch just to support. Like if they had an esports team make a championship, or like when the gymnastics team makes a championship, I might pop that on, right? I mean, I've seen the gymnastics team in person though, so that's kind of different. Although I guess heck, if Michigan came down and played a flag football game against like the Tar Heels or something, and it was like free, maybe I would go. I don't know, but I don't think I'd just randomly watch on TV, especially if they got rid of regular football. I think my interest in sports would plummet, right? I mean, over the years, I mean, we talked a lot of stuff on this podcast. It's kind of just evolved into a football show because that's what I watch the most. Like any other sport, even basketball, is kind of just turned into a passing interest. I guess it kind of ebbs and flows with maybe if you have kids that are really into something, that would be different. But like my brother was really into basketball, and I don't think like my dad's ever like started to sit down and watch basketball, you know. Oh. So I don't know if I'd start doing that. And my dad is like Larry Bird, so that'd be the one thing you'd think he'd be into. I don't know. But that's where I'm at with it. Tired of flag football. I do hope that the customizations and stuff continue to get added to the game in terms of like playbooks. Because remember they used to have a thing where you can create your own playbook.
They do as well.
They do have it in there?
Yes.
See, that's where a lot of creators are saying that none of that's in there. And I'm assuming that they just didn't have a full copy of the game at this point.
And they may not have, but also depending on like which games that you focus on, like some of the creative playbook stuff may not be available.
Oh, it's probably not in online, but that's how Madden was. But there were some Maddens too where I don't think they had a lot of the playbook customizations, and I didn't like how some of the playbooks carried over. I would be curious if we each made our own playbook and tried to play online, if it would let us. Right?
Yeah. We can.
Because that would be one thing we could talk about. Maybe circle back on another podcast coming up if we have time to test that. Because I don't know how many hours I have left, so I'm gonna poke around with it a little bit, and I think I get the full game on the 19th now, which is only a couple of days. So we'll see if we can get that figured out when I get that unlocked. I'll ping you.
Sounds good.
And we'll see. But any other game stuff you want to talk about before we get into our other college football news real quick?
No, I'm ready for the next part.
So it's been leaking out that the Big Ten and the SEC have worked together. I guess they're not really working together. But I don't know if I had the article up. But that there's been consensus that they're not going to take Florida State, either of them. The reason it's coming out is their conferences are saying there's no appetite for more expansion. Florida State has shown they're not a good conference partner, which is funny. What was the other comment? I think I sent it to you. I don't even know where it went. But they were saying that they didn't bring enough financial bump and that they're a concerning addition to what they would be bringing in. So I wanted to give you the chance to kind of give your opinion on it. As the news just kind of, it all came out today, which is kind of strange, right? So go ahead. What do you think about it?
Well, I kind of joked about it because last week there was some discussion that Clemson and Florida State are in talks with the Big 12 and that they may do like an independent licensing type deal that would bring them, based off of their TV revenue, marketing availability, could potentially score them like an extra $30 million a year. outside of what they were making from being in the ACC. And when you're looking and until the ink's dry, I'm gonna have a hard time believing that they're jumping from one conference to the other. What I would like to see the money that they would get in for the Big Ten, and I feel like the argument's always, well, they're not AAU status, but if that is the hinging thing, Nebraska was, and then let theirs expire, and they're no longer in there, and they're not contributing to anything. So you would think if that was such a big deal, they would be kicking Nebraska back out. But it goes back to some of our earlier discussions where you want to have those lollipop teams that you can continuously just schedule and kick your teeth in. So I think they're in a good spot. As far as a landing spot for Florida State, I think could they have burned some bridges in the process? Absolutely. Is some of it some negative fake news because they're directly combating the bullshit that ESPN pushed? Absolutely. I think there's somewhere in between is probably where the truth lies. I'm sure that there's with as big of a push last year as everyone said, the Big Ten isn't going to make any drastic moves into invading the Pac-12. And then they completely gutted them recently. So it's like, if they do go that route, they've expanded west, they have the northern presence, that they could go coast to coast and add a Clemson, a Florida State, or any combination of people, have that southern market, and now you're completely covering the scope nationally, along with the rumor of a Texas type school. I think that logically seems to fit, but also I think a lot of it boils down to the dollars and cents of who's willing to pay and who isn't. And for as much of a headache as all of this snub was, I think there's going to be some burnt bridges and hurt feelings in the process. So hopefully it sorts itself out in court, and they're able to file here in August so that it can open them up, that if they're not completely crunched from the weight of the whatever buyout, that they're able to find a landing spot.
So I've noticed that the news is coming more from the SEC side. A lot of the reporters that are reporting it aren't really tied into more of the Big Ten news, except for maybe McMurphy. Wasn't he the one that got Urban Meyer fired? And he was saying that it was concerning about the what the heck he was talking about, concerning the financials. He's more of a Big 12 guy, though, I believe, because there were a couple times I trolled him back in the day about the Big 12, and he was really defensive about it. So I think maybe it's Bruce Feldman, I don't know. But one of those guys, I'm pretty sure, I think they're all Big 12 guys. And so the Big 12 just kind of blew up. The next best move, if that's where they're getting most of their sources, would be if they can nab Clemson and Florida State into the Big 12, right? That would be a big saving grace. The other news that they're pushing is that the SEC is contingent on not making a move until the ACC breaks up. And that's 100% coming from ESPN, right? Because I've been saying this all along. ESPN is not going to pay Florida State and Clemson to go to the SEC. They already get them at a discount in the ACC, right? So from them saying, look, we want the ACC to stay together, no shit. I've been saying that for years. People don't agree, but that's the money talking. Why would they pay? Because remember, Clemson, they're not going to pay for a Clemson that morphs into a South Carolina, right? They might be better than South Carolina most years, maybe, but they're going to go from a 10-win team to a 7-win team real fast in the SEC, most likely, right? I mean, that's what
Yeah.
typically happens. I mean, you can argue, but like what happened in Nebraska coming to the Big Ten, like you brought up. Awesome Big 12 team, lots of championships, nothing. Can't even win the Big Ten West when it was around. They're like the only team that didn't do it. I think they won like the Legends and Leaders maybe that one year, and then that was it. When the Big Ten West formed, they were done. So Clemson coming in isn't helping them. Florida State and Clemson are most likely going to have more losses per year because they have a tougher schedule, of course. Just like right now, the Big Ten, there's a better chance that teams now have worse records with better teams coming in for them. Right? The Big Ten didn't add a bunch of Marylands and Rutgers this time to inflate everyone's record. They're bringing in Oregon, USC, Washington that just played in the Natty, and those teams are going to come in and directly, most likely, put a loss on some of the top schools. I mean, heck, Oregon was one of the last teams to beat Ohio State in the regular season outside of Michigan. Now you're putting them on the schedule every other year at minimum, right?
Yeah.
Going to be a tough schedule. So bringing in those schools into the SEC doesn't make sense. They need fluff. I keep hearing that UNC and Virginia are being targeted. That makes sense. The SEC needs to expand because they're losing the population battle right now in terms of states. And it's going to be hard for them to make it up because they're not going to be able to get into those northern states with the Big Ten. They're just not. Like, they can't get a team in Chicago or around that area. There's no teams available unless they're bringing in Northern Illinois, which they're not going to do. So where can they expand? They have to reach for states like Virginia and North Carolina that have a heavy population that they're not in. They could also grab a team like Pitt and maybe even a West Virginia as a rival and try to get some of those northern states. Because I keep hearing about how Pitt might be left behind, especially if the Big 12 grabs Clemson and Florida State. Is there enough room for the Big 12 to grab some more ACC schools? Unlikely, right? They've already expanded once. If they grab, what are they at right now, 16?
I think.
If they grab Florida State and Clemson, they're not going to kick out like UCF and Cincinnati, teams that are already in. They get to 18, they're the same size as the Big 10. How big can they get before the TV networks say, this is it? And then if the ACC implodes and the Big Ten's grabbing North Carolina and Virginia or something, that's where I would be really worried right now if I was a Florida State fan and Clemson fan. I think Florida State's a little bit safer because the Big Ten, there's been hints, especially from people that I've talked to, that the Big Ten knows that they need to expand for football reasons into the South. They're eyeing Florida. They're eyeing Texas. I've said that they should also eye Georgia and just grab Georgia Tech. They could kill two birds if they grab Georgia Tech and Florida State right now. I've heard that that's not the way that they're thinking. A&M has been a team that I've tossed around. I've seen other people bring it up. That could be in discussion. But, I mean, in realistic terms, if the networks don't see Florida State coming, what's the harm in the Big Ten just waiting to see if they can grab Florida in a few years? Right? If that's going to be the play, Florida's AAU, so is Texas A&M. If Florida State gets into the Big 12 and they're consistently making closer money to the SEC and they're constantly doing better than Florida, would that make the Florida Gators a moving candidate? I don't know. Are they one of the founding SEC members? They've been there for a long time. I don't know if that would be enough to get them. I keep hearing about how the conferences are going to merge, and I just really don't think the Big Ten's going to take on the dead weight of the SEC. I don't think they're also going to take in a merger that gets rid of the smaller schools because of the AAU status. That research, the Big Ten kind of focuses on that, and that's a big deal. Like you said, even though Nebraska lost to theirs, they're still doing pieces like try to get it back, and the Big Ten seems to be helping them. They kind of don't care. They had it at one point, they lost it. I wouldn't be surprised if, when the next cycle's announced, if Florida State gets in, and then they're magically in the Big Ten at the same exact time because, They're working behind the scenes on it, right? Oh gosh, what a coincidence. Like that would not surprise me at all, because they know that they need those recruiting states in the conference. They know it. And they know that if they get into it, they're boxing out the SEC, because the SEC can't compete, especially if they're in the same area. Right now, I want to say I saw a graphic down here, because everything down here in North Carolina is heavy ACC, that the ACC had the most national championships again of all the conferences. That's happening because they have big state schools like North Carolina and Virginia. They win multiple championships from the graphic I've seen, and they kind of carry the conference. If they jump to the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's out in UCLA and USC, I think it's over. I don't think the ACC is going to be able to compete, especially if you can get like Michigan and Ohio State winning football national championships more regularly, and basketball on the upswing. I don't know if that could happen. The Big 12 seems to be focused on basketball as a big key component. Florida State and Clemson don't help that. Maybe they know football rules. That could be a way. Florida State and Clemson, honestly, in recent years, is a pretty even trade with Oklahoma and Texas, right? I mean, just in terms of national championships, I would say, my God, yeah. Oklahoma hasn't been able to compete in the playoffs. Texas hasn't either. I mean, they were close last year to Washington, but that was it. Do they even have a playoff win? No, I don't think so.
No.
And Florida State, well, I guess Florida State won before the playoff era, but they won a national championship and they were in a playoff. I guess they didn't win a game, huh? Clemson won 2 natties, though, right?
Yeah.
So just in the last, I guess it's a little bit more than a decade, isn't it now? When did Florida State? Is that 2013? We'll pretend it was recent, right? Does that hurt you? If we say that Clemson, I mean, they're more recent than Texas and Oklahoma.
Well, right. I mean, it just the way it fell. It's been a while, but I like the spot where they're at, and I feel like this is a completely different story if we're still dealing with the backlash of Jimbo leaving and the Taggart era, and thankfully Norvell has a good system in place that they're competing at a high level. So I feel like that should be help, and to prove that he didn't get lured away by any of the other programs, like he's sticking it out, I think shows the stability of the program going forward, that they're not just going to be, or hopefully they're not going to be treated like a mid-level power, that they're going to be taken seriously and hopefully have the opportunity to show it in the playoffs this year.
And see, that's the one thing that I think can really help Florida State right now, even with all the turmoil in the ACC, where they're trying to figure out a direction, and they're clearly linking some of this information to ESPN, or ESPN's leaking it to SEC, or however it's working. It's a clear hit job on Florida State, saying that they're causing issues and things like that. If, going forward, Florida State's able to get into a bigger conference, they kind of have to be careful too. I think they could be successful in the Big Ten. I'm thinking that they're going to have to do regional scheduling soon if they keep getting bigger. And even now, stopping at 18 doesn't make sense, because the Big Ten, even, the schedule is insane. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Michigan has a much harder schedule than Penn State this year. It's not even close. So they can't do a balanced schedule with the amount of teams that they have. It's impossible. And you can argue with me on that all day, but there's no good system for them to do because essentially you have to take yourself out. So you have to schedule 17 games over 2 years, right? Or 17 different teams over 2 years to even get a majority of your conference to play each other. And that's tough, because that's a weird number. And they have uneven rivalries now to try to make it work, because they know that number makes no sense. If you add Florida State in and you're telling them, like, look, you're going to compete in an Eastern pod with Penn State, like I've been saying, you have 2 powers. You can group Florida State and Penn State, Michigan and Ohio State. Then you have the West of USC and Oregon and Washington, kind of balance it out. And like the weakest one is still going to be the Midwest with like Nebraska. But that's where I think you can really pull in an A&M and say, look, you guys haven't had success. If you can't come here, we know you think you're better than Northwestern and Iowa. You joke about them, Wisconsin. Like, I think the depth of that group makes up for not having a top tier power like the other groups. If they can just figure out how to expand that. Because like the other option would be add Notre Dame and put them in that group. But I don't think Notre Dame wants to play a pure Midwest schedule like that. It'd be really turn for them because they're more of like a West Coast. Like I think they would rather be in USC's pod, if I'm being honest. Pretend they're in like California or something. Or, I mean, they probably don't want to be in Michigan's pod. So maybe the East Coast pod with Florida State and Penn State. I don't know where they'd want to be if they come in. But I really don't see them coming into the SEC. And I don't think the SEC, because you got to be careful. SEC's adding all these top schools. They're not going to win anymore. They're not going to win. So one of these schools, a Texas and Oklahoma, they're going to have to go the way of a Minnesota, where you're like,
well,
hey,
not only will
my
they
Pap
make
said
it,
they used to be good.
but they'll have multiple people win because that's been the trend between the Big Ten.
But they have to win.
SEC.
Oklahoma hasn't won a playoff game. So who cares if they get in if they can't win? If you're not winning the SEC, you're not winning a conference championship, you're not winning a playoff game, your recruiting is going to fall off. I don't care how historic your program is. You have to make that jump. I mean, we've seen it with Michigan where they've been getting close and the negative recruiting is hammering them where they're not able to put together a top class even though they're so close. Then they finally win the championship, and it took them a while to get all the like a good bit of top draft picks together. Like they've had to put it together and say, like, look, we're getting 10 players drafted every year, more than like most other teams, other than Alabama. Like we have a good thing coming, come to us. And if you're in Oklahoma and it's like, hey, you were good when my pap was a kid, like that's going to be a hard sell when they haven't won a playoff game. They've won a lot of Big 12 titles. What if they never win an SEC title like Nebraska? What if they come in and they might make the playoffs as a one-off, but if they're not winning the conference, they're sure as hell not making a deep run or becoming a wild card natty, right? They can't even win a national championship now, and they've had a couple of chances in the playoffs. So what's going to be the difference for a school like that to come in? I mean, heck, joke about Tennessee. They could very easily be a Tennessee where it's like, that's the last time they've both kind of been recent, right? Wasn't Oklahoma's last title against like Florida State or something like 2001?
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that? I want to say Texas is more recent than them, but there's a very good chance Texas can't get it done. It's hard to have a pecking order where it's like Bama, Georgia, LSU have all had recent titles. Here's some guys that are used to winning a conference, but they can't win anything big. Oh, yeah, they're not going to win the conference now either. Like, I wouldn't be surprised Texas is over. Well, they're not going to say they're overhyped, but they're hyped up. This is Texas's year. They were looking like Michigan last year. Have dudes back, have the quarterback back. They have to win. That changed the entire course of like the Michigan program and honestly the Big Ten. Michigan winning that title. Texas comes in to the SEC. They could prove they belong. If they win a title, Nick Saban's not there. It's Kirby Smart. They could take over. They have Arch Manning in the wings. If they lose, even if they lose at Michigan early in the year, because they have to go on the road against a top defense in a hostile environment, they could still run the table and win the SEC and win a national championship, but I don't think anyone would bat an eye. But if, let's say, they could crush Michigan, and then what if they lose 4 games in the SEC? I think you're going to be, oh, well, that's kind of stinks, right? There's going to be levels where, hey, Michigan could lose to Texas and do some damage in the Big Ten and make the playoffs and maybe even get a rematch. You don't know how this thing's going to shake out. And so that's where you have teams like Texas coming in. They have to win. They have to win something. Last year they were close. They have to be kicking themselves after the way Michigan put Washington away, right? I think if any team looked at it in hindsight when they were so close to controlling that game and wasn't there like a fumble or an interception late, to where they like came back and Washington almost blew it. And there was like that crazy play at the end. Like Texas has to be so close to thinking like, man, we could have been playing for a national championship. Maybe they wouldn't have beat Michigan. Maybe like it wouldn't have mattered. But recruiting that like, hey, we were right in the national championship. Unless you're a TCU where you would have got blown out. Like I don't know. Maybe if that happens, maybe DeBoer doesn't go to Alabama. It could have changed a lot of things. The way it shakes out. So now, I'm saying media days are coming up. Another thing that I wouldn't be surprised is if the NCAA drops some notice of allegations on Michigan randomly. Because this is the time where McMurphy, like I brought it up, McMurphy drops the news about Florida State. This is around the same time he got Urban Meyer fired. Right? They sit on news till right before media day. And then they make some noise, right? The Big 12 media days has already happened. If he's really pumping up the Big 12, now with this Florida State news, they're talking about the Big 12 again. Right whenever it's about to be the Big 10 or SEC media days, right? They're coming up. But now everyone's talking not about the SEC. I mean, SEC might be going on right now, right? Is that why this came out?
Yeah, SEC media days.
See, I don't even know. Not an important day for me, bro.
Because Saban's now working for ESPN, so everyone's commenting on not having to coach against him this year.
Are you surprised? Because of the way they put him right on there right after they helped him get in the playoff for the last time?
Well, good gravy. They every coach in the SEC was at Alabama for their rehab program.
Yeah, they're all best buds, dude. That's how they work it out. He'll be on there, him and Urban Meyer hanging out. Are they on the same show? Or is Urban on the big Fox Noon? I don't even know anymore. He's on the noon one, isn't he?
Yeah, because he's got to cover Ohio State still.
Oh, yeah, because him and Charles Woodson are supposed to be head-to-head on that show. That's right. Which is good. It's nice to have some balance. Now we have a bigger conference. I would say I'm not too worried about the Big Ten right now. I still think that there's a good chance Florida State gets added because I don't think you pass it up. It comes down to the Big Ten's not going to comment because they have to wait till the lawsuit comes out. And there's even some legislation around here where in North Carolina they were trying to pass a law that said that if North Carolina and NC State join different conferences, that they still have to play every year. Now, why would they do that? Right? Unless they know that UNC could be jumping conferences. And I find it hard to believe that the Fox and the Big Ten are going to say, hey, we didn't want Florida State, but heck, we want Virginia and North Carolina. Right? That would be the weirdest pod where you would know, if that happened, that Joe Paterno made it to heaven and he's up there pulling strings, brother. There's no other way Penn State could land in such a fortunate situation than being in an East Coast pod of potentially Rutgers, Maryland, North Carolina, and Virginia. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
No, bro, because that's like the most insane lineup. Because they, like I said, I guarantee they're going to regionalize after that. And Penn State is like just landing in a rainbow pot of gold. They're just cruising down, and they're like, they have to be licking their chops. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if James Franklin was leaking these rumors himself. He's like, you know who we're really going to get? Virginia, North Carolina. And maybe Georgia Tech, although we don't want to play. Do they still run that option? I don't know. Like, let's see who else we can get. Is Syracuse available? Boston College? Like, that would be the weakest Big East type bullshit that I've ever seen if that happened. But I'm sure they'd be like, well, sorry, Michigan, if we found a way to add in Texas A&M, and we added in a bunch of other guys, and you guys got to play them every year for no reason. While Penn State gets Virginia. I'd be like, are you insane? Like, that's what the TV networks want. That's what they want. They know Penn State at 3:30 on CBS will tune in a big East Coast segment, and that's all they care about. That's what I'm wondering. If they make a move like that, I wouldn't be shocked, but it would be a a head scratcher. Unless Notre Dame joins with them. I just don't see it happening. And then NC State, like, what happens? Because, like, if they lay it out, this is what they're leaking, right? In layman terms, they're saying that the Big Ten doesn't actually want Florida State and Clemson. They would rather have Virginia and North Carolina. The SEC could try to grab them first. And then the Big Ten, doesn't expand? Or they grab Clemson and Florida State in retaliation, right? And so then you have the boundaries of each conference start to cross. That would happen this year. I'm saying that would happen within the next, August. What was it, August deadline, you said?
Yeah.
That 2 teams from the ACC would go to the Big Ten and 2 teams would go to the SEC. The other option would be that those 2 teams, Virginia and North Carolina, pick the Big Ten. The SEC says, we don't care. We don't want any schools. Or they go ahead and grab Virginia Tech and NC State to counteract the grabs, right? And then you're crossing the state lines for the conferences for the first time, and you're really hammering in, okay, which conference has the heavyweight stuff? Because if NC State joins the SEC and SEC still has recruiting clout, like A&M was able to out-recruit Texas, what if NC State just starts really out-recruiting UNC? Does that give some buyer's remorse or some weird things? I don't know. And then the last option would be that the Big Ten grabs Virginia and North Carolina. The rest of the ACC joins the Big 12, and you have a block of Virginia Tech, NC State, Florida State, Clemson all join the Big 12. And the SEC is honest, and they don't want to expand, so they don't care, and they just stay like that for now. At that point, you would have the Big 10 and the Big 12 both at 20 teams. And I would think at that point, the Big 12 would have some staying power. Because you're grabbing teams like Virginia Tech and NC State that are usually pretty solid. Clemson and Florida State, that I've said, that have won titles more recently than the new additions to the SEC. And that's what the Big 12 is missing right now, is national titles. And that could balance it out to 3 big conferences then. The SEC eventually grabs some other teams, like a West Virginia and a Pitt or something. Who knows what they're trying to do? They definitely want to get into the North. They have to. So that's the 3 options. We'll see if anything breaks later this week. But we're definitely be paying close attention because I know Matt's probably starting to get worried a little bit about Florida State.
No. We're going to pick up where we left off last year. Win and you're in.
Win and you're almost in. If they're the first undefeated team that gets left out of a 12-team playoff, what will happen for you personally?
Well,
will you burn your Florida State stuff?
No.
I'll send you a complimentary Michigan care package if that happens, brother. And you can just start cheering for the boys in blue. And Florida State can be our minor league team, right? Because I know you're not going to start cheering for Penn State. That's what they want, right? They think that the networks think that if they just pick one team from each state, that you'll just start cheering for them. You're going to just become a random Penn State guy. If they leave Florida State out enough, then you're either going to have to become a Gators fan or you're going to have to cheer for someone else. Totally, right? That's their mindset. But we'll see. Thanks for listening. We appreciate the support. Make sure you stay up to date with southboundsports.com, and we will see you next week.